Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Namaskar friends, welcome to Swayam Prabha. My name is Dr. Parikshit Sirohi. I am Senior Assistant Professor in Faculty of Law, University of Delhi. As part of our course on cyber crimes, this is the fourth module on cyberstalking, a web of obsession. Friends, you may be familiar with the term stalking, and now we are going to be talking about not only stalking but cyberstalking, that is stalking which is taking place through a new medium, which is the internet. Conventional stalking itself may be dangerous, but cyber stalking, it is argued, is far more prevalent and hence even more dangerous. So these are the topics that we are going to cover as part of this presentation. First of all, the real world stalking and the online world cyber stalking. What kind of differences, what kind of similarities are there between these two terms? What are the reasons for stalking? What are the various types of stalking? These are the four types that we are going to talk about: the simple obsessional, the erotomaniac, the love obsessional, and the false victimization syndrome. Please don't worry, this is not a class on psychology, but law involves a study of various disciplines, and to understand the offense of cyber stalking, this complex web, it is necessary to understand how the mind of a stalker works and why a particular stalker behaves in a particular manner. So we are going to study about the simple obsessional stalker, the erotomaniac stalker, the love obsessional stalker, and the person who is suffering from what is called FVS or false victimization syndrome. How is stalking or cyber stalking tackled? One way is through tort law, one way is through criminal law, and then some countries like UK and US have also made laws where even though no injury may have happened to the victim, but even otherwise the victim may have suffered some kind of other harm which is mental in nature, and such harm it has affected the health of the victim. So therefore it is made punishable. So these three ways in which it is the legal regime is tackling stalking. Then stalking is regarded as public nuisance, assault. What are the legal elements of stalking? Why I am talking about stalking? Because so far the law in India has not developed with regards to cyber stalking. The IT Act does not have a mention of any offense of cyber stalking. So that is why I am trying to link with the conventional offense of stalking, and then talking about the position in the various other countries of the West. And I am also going to then talk about, because the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita, the BNS, which has replaced the Indian Penal Code, that makes a mention of the offense of stalking. But previously in the IT Act, there is no mention of cyber stalking. So that is why I have used stalking over here. What are the requirements to make out an offense of stalking? The requirements of intent, or as we have studied from yesterday's class, the mens rea. In the previous second and third lecture, I have talked about mens rea. So the mens rea is nothing but intent. So these requirements, what do we understand by immediate family? Sometimes what may happen is the stalker or the cyber stalker may tell the primary victim, look, I will damage your family, your immediate family. So what is the definition of immediate family? Does it mean just the nuclear family? Does it mean something else? Does it mean the romantic partner of the primary victim? We will talk about that. Finally, friends, when we are confronted, because this could happen to any person, conventionally in all forms of stalking, stalking as a whole, when we talk about stalking as a whole and cyber stalking as a whole, most of the victims, 80% of the victims are actually women, and most of the perpetrators are men. But in certain forms of stalking, for example, this erotomaniac stalking, most of the victims are actually men and most of the perpetrators are actually women. So, but this could happen to anybody. So, what to do and what not to do in case you are faced with cyber stalking, I am going to talk about that, and finally I will conclude my talk. So this is going to be a very interesting lecture, friends. And I sincerely hope that you are enjoying this particular topic as much as I am enjoying bringing it to you. So friends, first of all, what is stalking? Let us talk about stalking, and the purpose of this introductory slide is to tell you what is stalking and then what is stalking in the cyber world. So stalking in the real world and then stalking in the cyber world, there is a word for it called cyber stalking. So this stalking is a well known phenomena, and usually we consider that this is around celebrities. So we have heard of paparazzi, and we have heard about how Lady Diana died while she was being chased by paparazzis. The same thing has happened to so many celebrities in the US. This one, Demi Moore's wedding, people crashed the party, and finally so many problems were created. But friends, 80% of victims are ordinary people like you and me. 80% victims of stalking in the world are real people like you and me. Only 20% are celebrities. Yes, when it happens to a celebrity, it gets more coverage in the media, obviously. And when it happens to an ordinary person, unless it becomes very, very serious, unless there is serious bodily harm that is caused, unless there is serious damage to property, it does not make any news. So, but 80% victims, friends, are ordinary people like you and me. So please don't think that it will not happen to you and me. It will happen, it may happen to you and me. So friends, it is harassing, it is threatening behavior. The individual repeatedly, the important word here is repeatedly. The individual repeatedly engages towards another person. So repeatedly means, friends, more than once. More than once means at least twice it must take place. So the person who is indulging, the subject who is indulging in such behavior must direct such behavior against the same victim at least 2 times. So celebrities like Lady Diana were stalked, they have been killed. And after this, and because of incidents like this, many states in the US, many countries like UK, they have made some sort of legislation on stalking, on harassment, maybe a specific law on stalking, maybe a broad-based law on harassment. So stalking and harassment are not the same thing, but that is what we will see later. Should we make a law on stalking specifically, or should we make it on a more broad-based issue like harassment, which may include stalking also apart from other things. So UK has a law on harassment, and US states have made specific laws on stalking. Friends, now that we have some kind of an understanding of stalking, let us go to what cyber stalking is. So cyber stalking is, like I said yesterday, the same kind of offenses through a new medium called the internet. So the same kind of unwanted contact. Stalking, simplest way if I were to say it, is unwanted contact. I do not wish to be contacted by Mr. X, but Mr. X or Miss X is repeatedly contacting me. So that is stalking, repeatedly unwanted. These are the operative words. So same thing, if it is happening on the internet, then it becomes cyber stalking. It does not involve the physical contact always, because it is happening through the internet. But just because the physical contact is not there does not mean that it is not serious. So it is certainly not less serious than conventional stalking. It is not less serious just because it may or may not involve. In the case of conventional stalking, there will always be physical contact. Here, physical contact is usually not there in the case of cyber stalking, but maybe in some cases wherein the stalker has gotten to know where you live or where you work and may start going there also. So friends, cyber stalking takes advantage of the 3 main things. Most importantly, the intrusive abilities of the internet. The internet is a great thing, it is a great boon, but for cyber criminals, the main advantage is that it is very intrusive. It provides so much of information. So for example, a simple app like Google Maps, so much of information, where you go, what is your routine, it is easy. You just leave your cell phone lying around, the cyber stalker, the potential cyber stalker can get hold of where you have been, what you have been doing. Somebody sits in your car one day, he can get to know by looking at Android Auto where exactly you have been going. So the intrusive abilities of the internet are tremendous. There is large amount of personal information available on the internet. For example, in India, many states, when they started putting the voter list online, they started putting the complete data of which house you live in and which colony you live in. So then people raised this issue, and that's why the election commission took the steps. And now when they put the data, they simply don't put the house number, but the colony is there. So if I know where Ram Prasad Agarwal lives, I get to know that he lives in sector 5 in Dwarka in a building called Madhusudan Apartments. I don't know flat number 21. But how difficult is it to find out whether he lives in flat number 21 or 22 if I know this much that Madhusudan Apartments is where he lives? Again, the entire data of BPL, below poverty line beneficiaries, is available online. This is in the interest of transparency, but the entire data is available online. And yesterday I demonstrated how the data can be misused when I was talking about the case of the senior officer who used the data to create identity for so many of the poor farmers and deposited ill-gotten money into their accounts. So the same logic, friends, the ambiguous, the anonymity offered by the internet, the large amount of personal information available on the internet, and the intrusive abilities on the internet, these are the main reasons which cyber stalkers take advantage and why they can perpetrate their activities. Friends, another thing which is important, and you may have seen in your own life also, you may not be willing to say things to a person's face. You may be very upset, angry with someone's viewpoint, but you may not, because of whatever reason, your upbringing or your desire not to spoil your relations, you may not want to say the things to the person's face. But it is much easier to say the things by written communication. It is much easier to say the things by telephone communication, and internet is completely anonymous. So the anonymity that it offers, the stalker, who may be otherwise unwilling or unable or hesitant to say the things or to confront the victim in the real world, but because he is on the internet, he is hiding behind an identity, he is hiding behind an alias, he can easily do so. So something which he may be unwilling or unable or hesitant to do in the real world, because of the cloak that internet offers, it becomes very easy. So the things that people write on social media about each other, the trolling that happens, do you think those same persons can do that in real life? The answer is no. The people behave very differently on the internet than they do in the real world. So friends, online harassment is not to be taken lightly. It may lead to very serious behavior, including physical violence. So in so many cases that we have seen, some of you may have heard of the very famous case of Shraddha Walker in Delhi. She and her boyfriend, they came from Bombay to start living in Delhi together. They had a live-in kind of a relationship, and after that this lady wanted to move away because he was physically violent, but such was the intention of the stalker that he did not let her get away, and ultimately led to her death. And even the body was disposed of, cut into small pieces, kept in the freezer. So such is the behavior of these people, the stalkers, who will go to such limits. And in many cases, unfortunately, friends, the person who has become a stalker today was previously known to the victim, an acquaintance, a former lover, something like that. So in majority of the cases, that is what we find, and those are the ones which are unfortunately most dangerous, because the person knows quite a lot about you, and the person is seeking some kind of retribution, if I will, in those cases. So friends, before we proceed to the types of stalking and the reasons for stalking and why cyber stalking takes place, some similarities and some differences between both these things, stalking and cyber stalking. So friends, first of all, the similarities in both stalking and cyber stalking, in most of the cases, in majority cases, the stalking is done by former intimates, which I was just telling you 2 minutes ago, people who were formerly known. This could be previously known colleagues, previously neighbors, previously acquaintances, former lovers, and in both the internet based cyber stalking and real world stalking, most cases, majority cases, the former intimates are the ones who are doing it, but strangers may also be doing it in both the real world and the cyberspace, but majority in both these cases happens to be the former intimates. In both cyber stalking and stalking, majority of the stalkers are men by gender, 80%, and majority of the women, almost 80%, are women. So most victims in cyber stalking and stalking are women, and most perpetrators in stalking and cyber stalking as a whole are men. But one particular kind of stalking, the figures are different. We will talk about that later. Stalkers are motivated by desire to control the victim. So, in a lot of cases, we will find in both stalking and cyber stalking, the stalker is motivated. Why he is doing the stalking? Because the desire is to control the victim. I just spoke about Shraddha Walker case. The desire of the former boyfriend Aftab was to control her. Why is she leaving him? Why is she wanting to go away from the abusive relationship? So, friends, now about the dissimilarities. The offline stalking, in the case of offline stalking, both the victim and the offender are from the same geographical area, the same locality, the same city, the same colony, maybe they live in close proximity to each other. A person is not going to come from Bombay to Delhi to do cyber stalking. Usually that will not take place, maybe some stray case. So, maybe the person is living in the same colony in Kanpur and doing the stalking. But in cyber stalking, the perpetrator could be in any part of the world. He could be sitting in California and doing the stalking of the victim who is located in Kanpur. So, geography is irrelevant in the case of cyber stalking, whereas geography is of utmost relevance in the case of conventional real world stalking. Friends, technology makes it very easy for the cyber stalker to encourage third parties to also start harassing or threatening the victim. So, in the case of cyber stalking, somebody else may be doing the stalking or surveillance or lying in wait on behalf of somebody else, whereas third party assistance is usually not the case. It is not a common practice, it is not a usual practice in the case of conventional stalking. Friends, technological barriers are very low, and in the case of the online harassment, online threats, online stalking, it is far more easy because of what I told you. In real world, at least the person will have some hesitancy, some inability, but in the online world, it is very easy because the barriers to stalking in the online world are very, very low, and because of the anonymity, it is very easy. The technology enables the person doing the stalking to hide behind the cloak of anonymity, which is not the case. The identity will be revealed in the case of conventional stalking, whereas identity may be concealed for considerable period of time in case of the cyber stalking. Friends, cyber stalker does not have to physically confront the victim. Cyber stalker can do so sitting in another part of the world also. He may be doing this remotely. So, troubling or harassing the person can take place even remotely. Friends, the usage of computers, the usage of internet is only going to keep growing, and fortunately or unfortunately, whether we like it or not, instances of cyber stalking are definitely going to increase. So, it is important to be prepared. Friends, prior to coming into the legal academia, I was engaged in law practice, and one of the first cases that I handled with regards to cyber stalking was a case way back in 2008. So, that is almost what 15-16 years ago. This Information Technology Act was in its nascent stages at that point of time. And so, I was faced with a case. This took place in Bangalore, and the person who was confronted with this action of stalking, he was a North Indian IT engineer, and he had met a lady at a wedding, and that lady was constantly stalking him thereafter. So, he did not reveal any of his personal details to her. He just said, I work in Bangalore, and she found out where she works, where he works, and what was his company address and what was his company's landline, and then the lady hacked into his email ID. Section 67 of the IT Act defines hacking. We will study about that at some stage. So, there was no specific provision on cyber stalking, but she committed this offense of hacking, and from his email she managed to get his home address, home phone number, mobile phone she already had, and then she started making calls to him at odd kinds of odd hours. When he was not responding to her overtures, she started sending out email from his email ID to his lady acquaintances, colleagues, lady relatives, and so on. So that created further problems for him, embarrassment for him, showed him in poor light both professionally and personally, because these were really ghastly messages. She even turned up, now see, this is a case wherein the cyber stalking is turning into the real world stalking. This lady turned up at his house in Bangalore unannounced, and he called me for legal counsel. I said, don't create a scene, you just somehow keep the door closed. She started banging on the door, created a scene, so then he had to run away from the back entrance. He did not go to his house for 3-4 days. Now he was obviously subject to so much of mental anguish, and he stayed elsewhere at some friend's place, switched off his cell phone on my advice, legal advice, that please, because she might trace your location from the cell phone. We approached the police for assistance. First of all the policemen were laughing. Sir, what are you saying, sir? How is it possible? How can a lady do such stalking, sir? So because it was unheard of, it was relatively unknown that ladies could be doing this. Normally it is, like I said, most cases it is men who are doing the stalking, the unwanted contact. So but friends, in this particular case, we managed to meet after 2-3 tries the senior police officers, the IPS officers, and finally one person. This is now very old, so at that time even in Bangalore they did not have too much of technology for the police. So but they said, look, this kind of technology is available with XYZ private person, company. You please contact them to prove that you were in Bangalore and your email ID was being hacked by another internet protocol address. The IP address is different, so that IP address was traced out, and this person, to prove that he was in Bangalore all the time, he was signing 4 times a day in the local police register. And then we proved that while he was in Bangalore, his email was being accessed without his authorization by this lady at her home, at her office, at her residence, on her mobile phone, at various locations in Delhi and Noida. Simultaneously. So that is why, to prove that he was in Bangalore, he was made to sign the register 4 times a day, at 9 a.m., at 12 noon, at 4 p.m. and at I think 10 p.m., something like that. So that it is not possible to come and go from Delhi to Bangalore, 3-hour flight in each case, 3 plus 3, 6 hours. So it is not possible to go. So this person, to prove that he was in Bangalore the whole day, he had to do this much to prove his innocence. And finally we got a conviction from the court. Unfortunately, the higher court reversed the conviction because this lady produced a medical certificate from a doctor saying that her medical condition was not proper. She was suffering from various psychiatric problems. So this, friends, is another reason which I am going to talk about in the future slides, that the defense of psychiatric illness, how far should it be allowed in the case of stalking? Because if you are suffering from a psychiatric illness, should you be allowed to disturb the mental peace of another person? So that is a point. Where is the rights of the psychiatric patient who is the stalker? Where is the right of the victim who is being confronted? So balancing of these two situations. Now friends, how does cyber stalking take place and why does it take place? To understand this, we must understand the mind of the stalker. What goes inside the mind of the stalker? Why does he or she behave the same way that he or she behaves? So for example, in the example which I have just quoted to you, it is very important to understand why this lady was behaving the way she did. This man had just met her once casually at a wedding. They had gotten introduced. They must have spoken for 15 minutes while having dinner together. But in those 15 minutes, why did this lady develop that kind of an obsession? So that is why it is important to understand, and that is why understanding this will help to crack the case. So to tackle the problem of cyber stalking. Friends, mainly the cyber stalking takes place in 3 different kinds of areas. One is what we popularly call chat rooms. In the language of the law, they are called IRC, Internet Relay Chats, the live chats. The user is constantly talking live with another person who may be located anywhere in the world. And this is one of the most common places for cyber stalking. That is why all chat rooms say, please don't reveal your personal details, please don't give out your credit card number, please don't say where you live, please don't give them where you work, don't give too much of personal details on relay chats. The next is that the message boards and news groups, the user is interacting with others who are posting the messages and the user is talking back and forth with all such persons. The third way is the email. We know that through email, lots of viruses, lots of unsolicited email, lots of threats can be given, lots of various kinds of seemingly innocuous but inherently dangerous messages can be sent out. So these are the common manifestations, common ways of cyber stalking, friends. Friends, now that we know the reasons, let us understand four major kinds of problems which are there, four major kinds of stalkers, if you will. The first and the most common and the most dangerous is the simple obsessional stalker. This is a very dangerous person. Friends, in this case, it is some kind of prior acquaintance. It is the victim and the stalker are known to each other. It may be a neighbor, it may be a colleague, it may be a customer, it may be a teacher, it may be a professional acquaintance, it may be somebody whom you have dated in the past, it may be a former lover. That's why it is called the jilted lover syndrome also. But the jilted lover is a part of the problem. The larger problem is it could be something where a prior relationship is there, relationship of any kind, teacher, a student, professional acquaintance, a customer, a supplier, any kind of person who is personally previously known to you, and the relationship may have gone sour for any reason, or the person who is perpetrating the stalking, he perceives there may or may not have been actual mistreatment by the victim, but the stalker is perceiving that there has been some kind of mistreatment. So the perception is important. It may have been an actual case of mistreatment by the person who is now the victim, or it may not. So just because somebody mistreats you does not give you a right to start stalking that person, friends. The stalker now starts on a campaign and wants some kind of retribution. Retribution means revenge. He wants to set things right. He wants to set things right. So this is what the stalker is wanting. He wants that things must be set right. And it is the most common and most dangerous type of cyber stalking. This is very common, very dangerous. Friends, the victim is likely to cause serious harm to the victim. The perpetrator is likely to cause serious harm to the victim, may end up damaging the property, destruction of property of the victim, various things happen. So many of these stalkers end up throwing acid on the victim. So that is why now the government has made special laws on sale of acid. If you want acid, you will have to give your identification number. So, and you cannot buy more than a certain amount of quantity. Why do you want the acid? You want it for bathroom cleaning. You will have to specify it that I want it for this purpose, because this is scarring the person for life by throwing acid on the person. But the cyber stalker wants that, this is the stalker or the cyber stalker, they want revenge. Friends, simple obsessional stalking may also be the case of domestic violence. Former spouses, former lovers, former live-in partners, they start indulging in stalking, they start indulging in surveillance, they start because they do not want the wife or the husband or the partner or the former lover to escape from an abusive relationship, and the Shraddha Walker case which I have talked to you about falls into this category, friends. Friends, recently there was a case, you may have read about it in the newspapers or seen it on TV. There was a lady who smothered her young son, 4-year-old son, whom she had kept in her womb for 9 months, with a blanket. Why? Because she was stalking her former husband, and the former husband was stalking her, and she told the police that my son reminded me of my husband. His face reminded me of my husband, and that is why I killed the son. So can you imagine how sick mentally these people are? So the simple obsessional stalker, friends, is very dangerous. If ever you are faced with a simple obsessional stalker, please make it very clear to the person in the first instance that you do not appreciate unwanted contact, you do not want him or her to contact you again. This can happen in the case of cyber stalking or physical stalking. Do not make it very clear that you do not appreciate anymore that person to reach out to you ever again, and promptly report the matter to the police. the law enforcement. In the case if it happens on the internet, promptly apart from reporting to the police, also seek help from your internet service provider, your ISP. They will be able to tell you what is the IP address from where the unwanted messages or contact is coming. Is it a cyber cafe? Is it some office? Is it somebody else's computer? Is it the person's home computer? And so on and so forth. So friends, after this simple obsessional stalker comes the erotomaniac stalker. Friends, here 86% of the persons who are perpetrators are women. Women may be having this kind of erotomania vis-a-vis other women or men. The other thing is that the person whom they are having the object of affection is usually of a higher status, usually a complete stranger. You are not even aware that this such person exists in your real life. You don't even know of this person in your real life. You have only read about that person in that media. The person is usually a celebrity, usually somebody very high up in your life, usually some superior in some organization. You may have never even met that person. So you are under a delusion. This is a delusional disorder. The sufferer believes that the person about whom why I have used she is because most of the persons who suffer from this problem are women. So or otherwise you can use he or she. The person who suffers from this kind of a delusion believes that the person whom he or she loves also loves him or her very, very passionately, even though these persons may have never met. The person that you claim to love, you have not even ever met. You just know about the existence of that person through the media, through films, through magazines. The stalker will write letters, will write email, will make phone calls, will even find the home address of the victim and go there. So the delusion concerns the idealistic romantic love, spiritual union, not some kind of sexual attraction. Sexual attraction will usually not be there in the case of an erotomaniac stalker. He is looking or she is looking for ideal romantic love. He is looking for a perfect match, a spiritual union. Now, nothing wrong in this, but then you are suffering from a delusion that a person whom you have never met also loves you. You love the person you have never met, but you think that the other person also loves you, and the other person is usually of a higher status, complete stranger, and this stalker will keep his obsession secret for long periods of time. This stalker, he or she will not even tell his or her best friend for a long period of time. It is not very dangerous because the stalker who is suffering from this particular disorder, this particular delusion, has the best interest of the victim in mind. He respects, likes, loves the victim, so is unlikely to cause damage to the victim. But if it is proper counseling is done at the right point of time, it is possible that the damage to the victim, damage to the perpetrator may not take place. Friends, next we have the love obsessional stalker. Again on the internet this is very common. This is similar to the erotomania. In cyberstalking, a large amount of people are love obsessional stalkers. It is similar to erotomania. In the case of erotomania and in the case of the love obsessional stalker, they do not know the victim. They do not know the victim personally. Personally, the victim is not known. They may know about the victim through media. They may have read about him or her. They may have heard about him or her. So for example, somebody may like the cricketer Yuvraj Singh and may think that, oh, I am in love with Yuvraj Singh. So many people may be in love with Yuvraj Singh. Does not mean that Yuvraj Singh reciprocates everybody's love. So, unlike in the case of the erotomaniac stalker, the love obsessional stalker will almost always, in majority of cases, in large number of cases, have a primary psychiatric diagnosis. He will suffer from other kinds of problems like schizophrenia, and this is a little more complex than the erotomaniac stalker, and because the love is of a obsessional nature, fanatic nature. So such stalkers may need serious psychiatric care, friends, whether in the real world or in the internet world. So the stalker may be obsessed without having the belief that the victim is also in love. So in erotomania, the stalker is convinced that the victim is also in love with him or her. But here, he is not convinced. he thinks that probably the victim also loves him. He loves the victim, he is convinced, without meeting him or her. So, he starts a campaign to make the victim known about his existence. He wants to tell the victim that, hey, I also exist. That is the aim of the love obsessional stalker. The only problem is that because of the obsession, because of the fanaticism, there is a fair amount of risk which the love obsessional stalker may pose to the victim. They are very, very common in cyberspace. In fact, they are second most common after the simple obsessional stalker in the cyberspace. They have no relation with the victim, but they are convinced that they can make the celebrity fall in love with him or her. So, in this particular case which I mentioned about the lady who was, by the way, an architect by profession, well qualified, and this person, the victim, was an IT engineer, again very well qualified. The victim kept on saying repeatedly that I will make you fall for me, I will make you fall for me. So, this is these people, the love obsessional stalkers, are convinced that they can make the celebrity, they can make the victim, they can make the other person fall for them. Friends, after these three categories, let us look at one more category, which is FVS, or false victimization syndrome. This is a rare condition. It is not something which is very, very common. But the fact that it is rare should not undermine the reporting of such cases and investigation of legitimate stalking cases. Here what happens is that the person who is suffering from this false victimization syndrome, he or she attempts to convince the other persons, convince the rest of the world that he is actually being stalked or she is actually being stalked. This person may invent, create by his own the claims. Oh, you know what, this happened to me yesterday. Two people were standing outside my gate and constantly looking. You know, I feel I am being followed all the time. So, they will have these kinds of delusions also, and they will create further such delusions. They will invent such claims to establish a relationship which is going wrong, or simply they want to be just gaining attention. They want to remain, they want to get attention from various people. So, they are trying to get attention, or they are attempting to revive a relationship which is failing. So, individuals who exhibit these characteristics may also be suffering from a disorder called histrionic personality disorder, because they are trying to gain attention. This is not to be confused with situations wherein the victim of the stalking claims to be the stalking, or situations where the stalker is claiming to be stalked. Sometimes both parties may be stalked, friends. Like in the example of the lady who killed her own child because she was facing a custody battle with her husband, estranged husband. So, both parties were stalking each other, friends. So, this is not to be confused with those situations where the stalker is also claiming that he is being stalked. So, the notable problem with false victimization syndrome is so much of resource is spent to find out that actually there is no victimization. So, this is somewhat like the situation of the story wherein we have all heard the boy who cried wolf. There was a boy in a village, and every day he used to say, oh, wolf has come, save me. And every day what would happen is that the villagers would come out middle of the night, and this boy would say, ha ha ha, you all came out in the middle of the night, no wolf is there. This happened every day, and finally one fine day this boy cried, oh, well, wolf has come, and the villagers who had exhausted all their resources, they did not come out to save him. And that day the wolf actually came and the boy was killed. So, the problem with false victimization syndrome is so many resources are being spent to solve a problem wherein actually no problem is being, no problem actually exists. And in actual cases of problem, those resources may actually not be available. That is the problem with false victimization syndrome. I told you that this is a rare condition, not too much not too many people are actually afflicted with FVS, and the few cases that occur should not actually undermine the reporting investigation of actual cases. That should not take place, friends. Friends, now what is the legal regime? What kind of measures can be taken to confront stalking, whether it is taking place in the internet or whether it is taking place in the real world? Friends, first of all, in the tort law, tort, as you know, is the civil law. The remedy is the injunction. Injunction is a stay order. So, stay order can be obtained under the provisions of the Code of Civil Procedure 1908 as well as the Specific Relief Act 1963. So, Code of Civil Procedure will give you more general injunctions, and the Specific Relief Act, as the name suggests, will give you injunctions in specific cases. Friends, in order to obtain an injunction under the CPC, 3 conditions need to be proved. And the same applies to a case wherein the plaintiff is complaining of cyberstalking or stalking. And what are those 3 cases? The plaintiff must have a good prima facie case. Prima facie, the case of the plaintiff must be a good case. Second, the balance of convenience must be in favor of the plaintiff and against the defendant. And thirdly, the injunction, if not granted, the plaintiff must suffer a large amount of loss which cannot later on be compensated in terms of money. So, friends, in the case of stalking, the plaintiff will suffer large amount of loss which you may not always be able to compensate later on. The plaintiff has the responsibility to prove to the court that, look, I have a good prima facie case. See, this is the evidence of stalking that I am bringing before you. These are the more than one instances that I am bringing before you. I am at risk. My physical safety, health, mental health is at risk because of this person. That is what the plaintiff will have to prove with regards to point number 1. With regards to point number 2, he has to show that balance of convenience is in his favor, and not only that, against the defendant, the stalker. And thirdly, of course, that he will suffer large amount of loss if the injunction is not granted, and such loss cannot later on be compensated in terms of money. So, friends, the remedies for stalking are available under the tort law for both stalking and cyber stalking. This is somewhat similar to the remedies which are available in the US in terms of a TRO or temporary restraining order, which typically says you shall not enter within a radius of 20 feet or 100 feet or 100 meters of the plaintiff. Such kind of restraining orders are issued by the US courts temporarily. That is why they are called TRO. Friends, for an injunction, the plaintiff has to prove the damage or apprehended damage. What is the damage already caused, or what kind of damage is likely to be caused to him? That is something that the plaintiff has to prove. So, this is the condition that is necessary. Like I was telling you, the 3 conditions that have to be proved. This is the first condition. Friends, the plaintiff may have to show the specific instances wherein the stalker has committed tort, mischief, nuisance, and that is why assault may be committed. So, that is what he has to prove, and then he will get the remedy in tort law. Friends, like I was speaking to you previously, in the Information Technology Act 2000, there is no provision for cyber stalking. But section 78(1) of the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita defines stalking, and the definition is there and the punishment is there in section 78(2). And it says, in the case of first conviction, you will get an imprisonment of either rigorous imprisonment or simple imprisonment, which can be up to 3 years, and you can also be fine can also be imposed. Whereas in subsequent convictions, the second or subsequent convictions, the punishment can be up to 5 years. Instead of 3 years, enhanced punishment provision is there, up to 5 years, simple or rigorous imprisonment depending on what the judge feels, and also fine. This is the provision which is available in Indian criminal law. Friends, but yes, I think the law in India with regards to cyber stalking is likely to evolve further. It is possible either to have a brand new law on stalking and cyber stalking, or it is possible that the government may incorporate at some stage the provisions for cyber stalking in the Information Technology Act. Friends, apart from this, like I was discussing, there may be cases which are non-fatal. There is no death which is caused, but still considerable amount of damage has taken place. And in the UK, in the case of persistent stalking behavior, the prosecution has been initiated against the stalker on the basis that his behavior, the behavior of the stalker, has caused damage to the health of the victim. Apart from this, in 1996, the UK has also passed what is called the Harassment Act, Protection from Harassment Act, and so this harassment includes stalking as well. It is a more omnibus, broader kind of term that they have used in the title of the act. Friends, now what are the legal elements, what are the ingredients of stalking that need to be made out in order to get a conviction? First of all, we have to ask ourselves that is there a need to have anti-stalking law just like the US has, or do we need some kind of a more omnibus harassment law which is available in the UK? Friends, we already have laws like POSH, Protection Against Sexual Harassment at the Workplace, 2013, which was created after the Supreme Court made guidelines in the case of Vishaka versus State of Rajasthan. So, for 15 years Vishaka prevailed. Then after that the government enacted POSH in 2013. So, sexual harassment at the workplace is already covered. So, on those same lines, do we need a broad-based law like harassment? Should we have a specific law on stalking and cyber stalking? Those are the jury is still out on that one, but yes, because of increasing incidents, it is essential that Indian courts, Indian lawmakers, Indian society needs to be more sensitive towards this kind of offenses. So, watch this space. There is likely to be some action in the coming months and years. Friends, there are so many activities like following, watching, contacting on phone, sending emails, WhatsApp messages, letters, SMS messages, any kind of unsolicited virtual contact. All of these are falling within the concept of stalking. So, some may be carried out with no illegitimate purpose in mind. Now, the question is, if they are being carried out with no illegitimate purpose, something on the lines of a person just merely accessing criminal information on the internet, simply what we were discussing yesterday in the previous lecture, whether a person who is going to a website which is displaying pornography, a person who is going to a website which is teaching you how to make a bomb, has that person committed any criminal offense? The same question is being asked here, that if somebody is indulging in activities like SMS or letters or virtual contact and does not have any illegitimate motive, can you prosecute such persons? So, the challenge is always that anti-stalking provisions do not unduly restrict the rights of citizens. Friends, there was a very landmark case in the year 2008, I beg your pardon. Supreme Court gave a decision in the case of Dr. Harsh Pathak versus Union of India. This gentleman was a lawyer, is a lawyer, practices in the Supreme Court mainly, does various kinds of matters including arbitration, and he petitioned the Supreme Court saying that telemarketers are making unsolicited calls to him, which is disturbing him, which is unwanted contact, and this is stalking him. This is within the definition of stalking, and the Supreme Court must pass some orders, guidelines in this regard. Supreme Court made a guidelines. They said that you create a national do not call registry, and anybody who goes and puts his name and phone number on that registry, that person should not receive phone calls at all. Now, unfortunately, the problem is that this law, this order of the Supreme Court worked beautifully for a few years, but thereafter people came up with VoIP, voice-based internet protocols. People came up with dialer-based numbers. So, if you block one number, another starts, and prosecuting each such person became a nightmare, and that's why now nobody even bothers about that national do not call registry. So, this is just an example how difficult enforcement can be if you have too broad-based a definition. Friends, to establish the offense of stalking, the stalker has to engage, like I said, at least two separate instances of unwanted contact. At least two instances must be there. So, because it is to be done repeatedly. Repeatedly means more than once. So, there are two ways to tackle the problem to my mind. One way is to have a broad-based definition of stalking, just like the UK has done. to have harassment as the definition. But we must remember, if we have a very broad based definition, then implementation is going to be a problem. The other approach is to have an inclusive definition of stalking. It includes surveillance, non-consensual communication, WhatsApp messages, etc. It has to be a very, very inclusive kind of definition, just like the definition that you find for design in 2D of the Design Act. And inclusionary design means only the features of shape, ornamentation, so on and so forth. So, the definition which is available under section 2D is an example for what can be done in the case of the definition of stalking. If at all, it needs to be defined through some law. So, two approaches which came to my mind, I have mentioned over here. Friends, in order to prove an offence of stalking, you must prove that the stalker has displayed mens rea or criminal intent. Intention is very important. You must prove that mens rea is there to cause fear in the victim. Now, the conduct of the stalker has to be willful, purposeful, intentional, or he must be aware that such kind of thing must happen. It must fall within any of these categories. It must be either willful, he is doing it purposely, it may be he is doing it intentionally, or at least he is aware that what he is doing, this could be the result of that. Friends, the prosecution is not required to prove that he has intended, the stalker, the defendant has intended to cause fear. No, that is not what is required to be proved, friends. What needs to be proved is that he intended to commit the act which has caused fear. You don't have to prove that he has intended to cause fear in the minds of the victim, the plaintiff, but you need to prove that he at least knew that he intended to cause fear, and he intended to commit an act which caused fear. So, his intention may not have been to cause fear, but his intention, if it is to prove, to commit an act which ended up causing fear, that is enough for the prosecution, that the victim got fear because of the act which was committed by this perpetrator, and the perpetrator knew that he was committing such act. That much is enough, friends. Friends, now this brings into debate what kind of specific intent is required on behalf of the stalker, the defendant, and what kind of fear standard is expected. So, I may not get afraid with happening of somebody following me, but another person may get afraid. So, the standard of fear of the victim is actually subjective. So, the stalker often comes and says that, look, what is the standard of fear? I did not have any specific intent. So, this is bringing into debate the specific intent versus the standard of fear. So, courts have usually said, what is the objective standard of fear? How will a common person react? Common man of ordinary prudence and imperfect recollection, a common man is similarly placed, will he get fear, will she get fear because of the actions which have been committed by the defendant, and the plaintiff must be aware that he is committing such an action. That is all that needs to be proved, friends. Now, friends, like I mentioned, there may be the cases wherein the primary victim, the main person, he may be or she may be threatened or stalked, and at the same time the stalker may while stalking say that, look, I will cause this harm to the member of your family, or to your lover, or to your partner, or to your father, or to your mother, or to your sister. So, friends, in addition to harming the primary victim, the main victim, the stalker may also threaten to harm, may also threaten to cause harm to the family members of the victim. So, here the issue is immediate family. So, the immediate family is not to be construed as the nuclear family, the husband, the wife and the two children. No. Anybody who is living in the same household for a period of more than 6 months, or has lived in the same household as the primary victim for more than 6 months before they can be construed to be the immediate family. So it could be the father, the mother, the sister-in-law, the maid servant, anybody who is living in that household for more than 6 months or until 6 months ago was living in the same household can be construed to be the immediate family. So this is the definition of immediate family which can be included. The new romantic interest. So let's say the stalker typically will be the jilted lover or former lover or ex partner. So the new romantic interest of the victim will also be included in the definition of will also be included in the definition of immediate family. And but friends, if we are broad basing the definition of immediate family too much, it is going to create problems in implementation. That is going to be a challenge before all of us. Now friends, cyber stalking is something that could happen to any of us for no fault of ours. Many times persons who are victims of cyber stalking or stalking, they or their family members tell them that, look, this is happening to you because you may have given some indication to the other person. You may have something at fault. No friends, that is not correct. It is not, the victim is never at fault. Even if the victim was in some kind of relationship with the stalker previously, that does not give the stalker a license to commit such acts later. Stalking is a dastardly criminal act and needs to be treated as such. So friends, whenever the cyber stalker is looking for too much of information about your personal life, where do you work, what do you do, how many children do you have, what does your husband do, are you married, what is your life away from the internet, are you a teacher, what subjects do you teach, at which university do you work, which colony do you live in, what time do you leave for work every day. Such details are best avoided, and whenever there is a person in any chat room or any such person that you meet on the internet, anytime such person is pestering, pushing for too much of information regarding your life away from the internet, that is a major red flag. One should immediately stop. One should immediately tell the person, okay boss, this is where I draw a line. In case of persistent unwanted contact, make it very clear to the stalker that you don't want him, you don't want her to contact you ever again. And if you persist in contacting me, I will have to take serious remedial measures. Please do not ever share your personal information in internet spaces, be it email, be it chat rooms. In chat rooms, if there is any user who is persistently blocking you or persistently sharing text or image which you don't want to see or read, then that user can always be blocked. Every chat room offers this facility today. All evidence of cyber stalking behavior, no matter how dirty it is, no matter how bad it is, we did that in the case of that Bangalore client of mine. We did that. Every evidence of cyber stalking behavior, please save it and then contact law enforcement and your ISP along with that at the first available opportunity. Any of this communication, do not edit it, do not alter it. No matter, many times victims, they will edit the communication because it is very vulgar language. Please don't do that. Don't change anything in that communication sent to you by the stalker. Friends, learn technology. Cyber stalkers tend to go after the newbies, the beginners. They tend to target the beginners because the beginners are less likely to know what to do, how to fight back. The beginners don't know this. So learn technology, and even if you are learning technology or are not an expert in technology, please never let the cyber stalker know this. You do not show to the cyber stalker that, oh, you are very new on the internet. Friends, cyber stalking is existent today and it is likely to grow with the growth of the internet. The reception of how stalking is to be tackled in criminal law combines two anxieties: the psychiatric damage for the significant person, the psychiatric condition of the perpetrator, and what are the boundaries of the acceptable social behavior. Our law needs to be more sensitive because this incident, more and more such incidents are happening, and we need to understand it with an integrated societal approach. Government by itself cannot do much. Society must give a response. Not only the criminal but every individual, not only the stalker but every individual has to understand the importance of personal space, personal privacy. Please remember the do's and don'ts which I have told you if you are ever faced with a real world stalker or a cyber stalker. Thank you very much.